I'd like to suggest to my friends on both sides of the aisle that we first assume the appropriate distance and then secondly, take a deep breath. The emotions that we've seen on the floor on both sides of the aisle are reflected in homes across America, where families are very emotional at this moment as we face this public health crisis. It's no surprise that that is reflected on the floor of the Senate. But we're going to solve this problem, and we're going to do it in a timely way, which the American people expect of us. We've had two measures now that have come before us, one for $8 billion, another for $100 billion, which were addressed on a bipartisan basis with an agreement. This will be as well. Now, this argument that we can't spare 1 minute, we can't spare 1 day, I understand the sense of urgency. The House of Representatives passed the second bill, the $100 billion bill, in the early morning hours of Saturday. When did the Senate pass the bill? Wednesday, more than 4 days later. So a $100 billion bill, which included medical leave, accelerated access to unemployment compensation, food, new Medicaid payments to states, a guarantee that you'd never have to pay for a test. The Republican leader waited 4 days to call that bill. His argument was, wait a minute, the paperwork's not here. Well, I checked on that because the senator from Idaho raised it on the floor. And it turns out that many, many times, and we were prepared here, by consent you can move on a measure before the paper actually comes across.
Senator from Idaho.
Mr. President, would the senator from Illinois yield to an inquiry?
I would.
Isn't it a fact that when you were up here talking, demanding that we pass that bill, the bill wasn't here? Now, I've been 40 years in Senate, state, and here. I've never been able to convince a parliamentarian that we should vote on a House bill that wasn't here. It wasn't here. And the Republicans aren't in charge of the House. The Democrats. Nancy Pelosi is in charge of the House.
The floor. The Assistant Democratic Leader.
I might say to my friend from Idaho, it is not unusual for us to move on a measure before the paper has come across the rotunda. We do it by consent. Yes, it happens here. And we were prepared to do it again. Having said that, let me return.
Parliamentary inquiry, please.
Reclaiming the floor.
The Assistant Democratic Leader has the floor.
And time remains on the Republican side. They can use it as they wish. Not at this moment. I want to finish my comment as I allowed the senator from South Dakota to finish his. I hope you'll show me that respect. Thank you. Measures that have been raised this morning are important measures, and for the most part, my colleagues are pushing on an open door. The Rubio-Cardin plan is one that I support. It's supported on a bipartisan basis. I think it's an excellent idea for dealing with the challenges of restaurants and small businesses. I support it. There's no issue in terms of whether that'll be included in the final package. I believe it will, and I certainly hope it will. The notion of cash payments, this notion of that was brought to us by the White House, I don't hear any objection whatsoever on the Democratic side of the aisle for the cash payments. The notion of extending unemployment insurance and providing additional benefits under unemployment insurance, I guess we're going to argue as to who came up with the idea first, but both sides agree on that basic idea. So these proposals brought before us are not in controversy, as I understand it, in the negotiations that are underway. The thing that I was concerned about, and Senator Schumer addressed, was it really focusing, and Senator Manchin raised the same issue, focusing on the threshold issue of the capacity of our healthcare system to deal with this public health crisis. When we hear the governor of New York this morning suggesting that the hospitals of that state have to increase their capacity by 50% and it still might not be enough, it's a suggestion to all of us that we need to start with healthcare and hospitals. It was our feeling that the bill which Senator McConnell tried to move yesterday was not adequate, didn't provide the necessary resources for that. I hope that when we return to this measure, and it's been said by the Senator Schumer and others that it could be today, and I pray that it will be, I think you will find additional resources for hospitals and healthcare. In my state, that is a critical element. Let me also talk about the fact that we are dealing with a bill of great importance and great magnitude. Reflect for a moment that the amount of money we are talking about in this bill is roughly equivalent to the entire domestic discretionary budget of the federal government in 1 year. And we are dealing with this bill, as we should, on an urgent basis. We should take care to make sure we do the best we can, but not wait for the perfect. Make sure that we have something that is good and responsive to the needs that we have. I also think that the measure yesterday that was pushed by Senator McConnell did not provide adequate resources to state and local governments. When I talked to my governor in Illinois, Governor Pritzker, they are expending money in ways they never dreamed of to deal with this public health crisis. They're also seeing more unemployment insurance benefits claimed than we ever have in our history. We need to help the state and local governments, and that was one of the objections we had to the bill yesterday. We didn't feel that it was adequate. When it comes to corporations and providing help to businesses large and small, count me in. I'm one of those Democrats who stood for the stimulus package that President Obama brought before us because I thought it was necessary. I still believe that we did the right thing in passing that stimulus package. Many on the other side of the aisle did not. Part of that package helped larger corporations, and so be it. I thought that was necessary, but we learned a bitter lesson. Many times, the benefits being given to those corporations and the tax breaks being given to them translated into stock buybacks where many took the money and ran. We don't want that to happen again. Arguing for transparency and accountability on the money that goes to any business, large or small, is not unreasonable and used to be bipartisan. We are arguing over that, debating over that, negotiating over that at this minute. Let me also say that I continue to be amazed at the references to the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. She really unnerves a lot of people on that side of the aisle. She is the Speaker of the House, you know, and the measure, whatever we do here, is headed over there for consideration. The fact that she would want to be party to that negotiation is not an outrageous idea. It happens to be consistent with the bicameral system of government that we have. The senator from Kentucky got up and talked about how she came into the meeting and ruined the whole meeting by asserting herself as Speaker of the House. It's reasonable for her to do that. In fact, the suggestion by Senator Schumer at the outset was that we have the four corners, the four leaders, Democrats and Republicans, and a representative of the White House for this negotiation. That approach was rejected by the senator from Kentucky. We'll do our own, he says. We'll get back to you when we have a Republican plan. It wasn't bipartisan from the start, and it should be all the way. It's the only way it will work. And let me say for a moment that if and when, and I pray that it'll be done under circumstances where we've reached an agreement, if and when we vote for cloture to motion to proceed, at that point, the senator from Kentucky can offer any amendment he wishes. I hope at that point we have an agreement, and we all agree to do it in a quick fashion. But this idea that it's going to be instantaneous as soon as we vote for the motion and cloture on the motion to proceed, it's not a fact, and it hasn't been for a long time. Let me just conclude by saying this, an observation on something related to our meeting here today and what is going on in the United States of America. 5 of our members did not vote yesterday on your side of the aisle. 1 has been diagnosed as having COVID-19, and the other 4 have self-quarantined because of concern about their own health. It is natural. It is naive for us to believe that that is the end of this challenge to our membership. I implore you to consider the bipartisan measure that Senator Portman and I have offered for remote voting. We should not be physically present on this floor at this moment. We know better. And our staff is subjected to whatever we bring on the floor in terms of viral load. Let's think about this in human terms. Too many of our colleagues and their families are falling prey to this disease. We should change the rules of the Senate to reflect humanity and reality. It's the 21st century. Voting in a remote fashion, as I've suggested with Senator Portman, is the best way, I think, to protect us and our families from further problems from the health viewpoint. Let me close with the final word in saying this. Senator Schumer came to the floor and didn't say, arms crossed, we're stonewalling. He said he had to leave the floor to go back and negotiate. With whom? With Republican leaders from the White House and perhaps other places. That's the way it should be. We're going to get this done today. Take a deep breath. Everyone's emotional at this moment on both sides of the aisle, but we have a job to do, and we're going to get it done. I yield the floor.